Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Getting all of my technology in place here for another episode of Understanding the Old Testament, Understanding the First Testament, or Metaphysics with Reverend Evan Coleman. I'm so grateful that you are joining me here this morning. And let's begin our time this morning with prayer. Let's open our thoughts to God and the power of God's love within us. Let's take a deep breath and just know this wonderful feeling for yourselves. Know that God's love is within us always, and the presence and the power and the wisdom of God is within us and gives our lives peace, brings our lives peace, purpose, and meaning. And we are so grateful for this opportunity to come together, to open ourselves to this living Spirit of truth. The Master Teacher said, I will send you the living Spirit of truth that will lead you and guide you into all truth. Jesus said, the truth will set you free, will make you free. And we claim that freedom now. We know this truth, and we allow the truth to make us free. We pray this now in the name and through the mighty power of the living Christ Spirit within all of us. And we say, thank you, God, together 3 times. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. And amen. And once again, this is Reverend Evan Coleman. I come to you live every single Sunday morning at 9 o'clock for Metaphysics. And for the last several weeks, we have been in an overview study of the Old Testament. I have to emphasize this, that you do not need the Bible in order to study the metaphysics. Metaphysics is just simply the study of truth. It's what many people would call philosophy or theology. And yet here in the West especially, and really throughout the 3 primary Judeo-Christian Muslim ethos, we have an attachment to what Christians would call the Old Testament, but more of a scholarly understanding. We are now beginning to refer to it as the First Testament, is not quite so Christian-centric and not quite so arrogant. So let's begin again. We just covered last week. We covered the death and the burial of Sarah, Abraham's first wife. And not much is mentioned about the second wife, but it's just sort of an add-on. Oh, by the way, Abraham had a second wife. But Sarah has died. They've lived to a ripe old age. They've experienced the birth of the child of promise, Isaac. And last week we covered this wonderful negotiation as Abraham bargains for a cave. The cave of Machpelah, in order to bury Sarah. And we covered that last week. And I said last week, just at the very end, that you can go there today. At least according to tradition, who knows if Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Leah are actually buried there. But according to tradition, this is this mosque, the Ibrahimi Mosque, or is also known as the Cave of the Patriarchs. And it is a place, it is a real place that you can go today in Hebron. And so it's one of my, on my bucket list is a trip to the Holy Land in which I can visit all of these places. Let's see. So this week, what happens is, going on in the story, and we're in Genesis 24 now, is that Abraham is old. He's getting ready to die, supposedly. And he brings a servant over, and he says, he makes the servant swear an oath. It's a wonderful little cultural thing. This is mentioned a few places throughout the Old Testament. They swear oaths by placing their hands under a thigh. So the servant comes over, and Abraham makes him swear an oath by putting his hand under Abraham's thigh. And he says, I don't want Isaac, I don't want my child of promise, I don't want him to marry one of the local girls, you know. I want a bride from back in my homeland. And so he tells the servant to go up north to Nahor. It's right around the area of Haran where Abraham originally, remember, this whole Abrahamic cycle began. Abraham and his family, his father Terah, began the journey in Mesopotamia, traveled up the Fertile Crescent to an area called Haran, and there Terah, they were supposed to go further, but Terah said, no, this is enough, and they stayed there, and so Terah then died in Haran, and Abraham continued the journey down the other side of the Fertile Crescent down to Canaan. And he found that there was a famine in the land, and so they went down into Egypt, and there was some, there was some interaction with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh kicked them out, and they went back up to Canaan. And this is that whole cycle of stories where we now have Abraham is old, and he's saying about Isaac, his son, he says, I don't want him marrying one of these foreign women. I want to find a bride from my homeland, from Haran. Go back up north, find a second cousin someplace, and bring her back for my son to marry. And the servant agrees. Abraham tells the servant that an angel will lead him to the right and perfect bride for Isaac. So the servant goes up to Nahor, Mesopotamia, at present-day Syria, and the servant is hanging out by this well, and he asks God to show him a woman who offers him, this woman offers him water, and offers to water his 10 camels. That's what I want. As soon as God shows me this sign, I know that a woman is going to come in, she's going to give me water, and she's going to offer to water my camels. And by this, I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master Abraham. That's what's going on here. So the servant is asking for a sign. Have you ever asked for a sign? You know, we can get ourselves tripped up. We can get ourselves tripped up when we ask for signs. And there's several stories about asking for the signs. Most of the time throughout the Bible, you will see that there are warnings against asking for signs. Don't get too hung up. Oh, well, if this happens, then that means that. You can mess yourself up that way. Frequently, though, you can find a lot of divine guidance, not so much by asking for signs, but by recognizing signs when you receive them. It is one of the ways that we sort of get confirmation about the wisdom, the direction that we are getting, is that we look for signs, we look for indications that we're on the right path. Okay, so before the servant is finished speaking, there was Rebekah. And she went down to the spring. She goes down to the well. She fills her jar. She comes up, and then she offers the servant water, and she waters the camel. Rebekah, the name Rebekah means captivating beauty that ensnares. So you know that she's got to be something really special. Genesis 24:52, the servant negotiates with Rebekah's brother, Laban. Now, Laban becomes important in a later story in the Jacob cycle of stories. You just, for right now, just remember that Rebekah and Laban are brother and sisters. And Rebekah agrees. Nothing is done without Rebekah's agreement. You know, Laban isn't negotiating with the servant and with Rebekah as basically chattel, but Rebekah agrees, and the servant and Rebekah return to Hebron. There's this wonderful story in chapter 24, 62, 63 through 66. You get the idea that Isaac, it's love at first sight. Isaac sees Rebekah, and it's just love at first sight. Isaac went out in the evening to walk in the field, and looking up, he saw camels coming. And Rebekah looked up, and she saw Isaac, and she slipped away quickly from the camels. And Rebekah looked up, she said to the servant, "Who is that man over there, walking in the field to meet us?" And the servant said, "Well, that is my master. That's Isaac." And so she took her veil and covered her face. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And then Isaac brought her into her mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. It's one of the great love stories in the Old Testament. And you just get the sense that that there's a real romance between Isaac and Rebekah. Compared to the Abraham cycle of stories, you know, the Abraham cycle of stories, which isn't really over yet, he hasn't died yet, but the Abraham cycle of stories was long. And by comparison, we haven't gotten to his story yet, but the Joseph cycle of stories is very long. The Isaac cycle of stories, not very long indeed by comparison. It's just this very little brief. I get the sense that Isaac is sort of a connecting link. Abraham is the founder. Isaac is just this little connecting link. And then Joseph, whom we will get to in a few chapters, Joseph is the spreader, the founder, a connecting link, and then the spreader of this covenant with God. And remember, we always have to keep that in our memory. This three-part covenant that God makes with Abraham and then repeats to Isaac and Joseph. I will give you a land to possess. I will make of you a great nation, and through you the whole world will receive a blessing. And that is the same covenant that God has with you and me, that we will not only receive blessings, but we will be a blessing to others if we keep our part of the promise. All right, so let's move on. So in chapter 25, there's just a few loose ends. We just got to cover up bring together a few loose ends. Abraham marries his second wife, Keturah, and not much is said about her. There's no maiden stories about her, but they have a few more children. They have Zimran, Jochen, Midian, etc., etc. They have a few more children. And remember, Abraham is over 100 years old. And then Abraham dies at 175 years old. And Isaac and Ishmael, remember Ishmael? Ishmael was the son by Hannah, the slave. Sarah was childless, and so she gave Abraham her maidservant, and through the maidservant, Ishmael was born. So Isaac and Ishmael bury their father in the cave of Machpelah, in that cave of the patriarchs that I showed you, together with Sarah. Isn't that wonderful? We're just tying together some loose ends. In Genesis 25, 12 through 18, there's a little genealogy of the descendants of Ishmael. And as we said, according to tradition, you always have to watch out for that word tradition, because there's lots of traditions that don't hold up under scrutiny. However, according to tradition, the Arab people are the descendants of Ishmael. So, very familiar story. You will see this pattern again and again in the Old Testament, in Genesis and in other places. Rebekah is barren. Just like Sarah was barren, Rebekah is barren. She doesn't have any children. But Isaac prays to God and they conceive. It's a much shorter, simpler story. But it's a difficult pregnancy. And Rebekah asks God, why? Why is this so difficult? And the Lord answers, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 nations are in your womb. And 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be the stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the younger. So there's this sort of prophecy. There's this sort of truth-telling or this explanation. Why is this pregnancy difficult? Well, that's because you're going to have twins. And these 2 twins are already sort of at war within your womb together. They are already kind of battling it out for domination. And that's Genesis 25, 19 through 23. In verse 24 through 28, it says, when her time was to give birth, when it was time for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And the first one came out all red, and his body already had hair. His body was like a hairy mantle. And so they named him Esau. Esau means red. So afterward, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel. So he was named he was named Jacob. So all of these names, they are again an example of wordplay, of assonance. We're going to get into that, I think, in the next slide. But so what happened is they named Jacob. They named him Jacob. And when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, I don't know whether any of you have ever grown up in a family where one son really took after the father, and the other son was sort of a mama's boy. That happened a little bit in my family. I was quieter. I liked music. I liked theater and drama, and I had one nature. My brother had another nature, frequently I've seen this situation in another family, a close family of friends, where the older son, the responsible one, he grew up and, it was as if the family thought he couldn't do anything right. He couldn't do anything right. And the younger son couldn't do anything wrong. And what happens is they both grow up, the older son grew up to be the caring family man, held down a reliable job, and all of the rest. And the young son, the one that couldn't do anything wrong, he grew up with problems. He grew up with a lack of discipline throughout his life. But in general, you get this idea that, again, we are dealing with a sibling rivalry. And we see this throughout the human family. Remember, we saw this in Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel had this sibling rivalry. They were of different natures. And when they had problems with one another, and of course Cain slew Abel. Here we have Jacob and Esau, and this is going to become a classic story as well. This sibling rivalry plays out in the historical drama of Genesis. So let's move on. So Jacob and Esau, this is the Jacob and Esau story. Abraham, father of a multitude, is the father of the Hebrew people. Isaac's story is not as prominent. Remember, we talked about this. He's sort of a connecting link between Abraham and Jacob. What we're really going to focus on Jacob is going to be the central character of this story, of the story to come. Esau means hairy. Remember, he came out, he was red in color, and he was all hairy. And the name Jacob means supplanter, because he supplants his brother Esau. The name Jacob also means heel. Remember, he came out holding the heel of his brother Esau. And it works out both ways, because he came out holding his heel, and Jacob really does kind of turn out to be a little bit of a heel. In the other sense of the word. He's always got a schemer. He's always got a scheme going on. Esau, by tradition, becomes the father of the Edomites, and Edom means red. Remember, Esau comes out and he's all red in color, and Edom means red. So there we have all of these stories. Many of these names, they are wordplay. They are assonance. The name says something about the nature or the character. And this is an important part. This is one of the foundations of metaphysical Bible interpretation. One of the foundations of metaphysical Bible interpretation is that the name of something refers to the nature of something. Last week we had a conversation and some questions about the name change. Abram becomes Abraham. Well, when you have a name change like that, you have the change of character. You have the change of consciousness from one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness. The name of something refers to the nature of something. And when you know the name of something, you've got just a little bit of power. You've got a little bit of understanding about the nature of that thing. If you were to pick up the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, written and compiled by Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity, you get an understanding. This is all of the proper names in the Bible. All the places, all the people, the places, and the things. All of the nouns in the Bible are in this Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. The name of something is the nature of something. So in Genesis 25, 29 through 34, there's this classic story. Jacob, we're talking about these two brothers, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was cooking a stew one day, and when Esau came into the field, he was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Hey, give me some of that red stuff, for I am famished, I'm starving. Give me some of that stew." And Jacob said, First, sell me your birthright. Sell me your birthright, and I'll give you some of the stew for your birthright. What is he talking about, this birthright? By tradition, the older son had a greater birthright than the younger son. The older son, the oldest son in the family, got a double portion. So if a man had 7 sons, instead of dividing up the inheritance, the birthright, 7 times, he would divide it up 8 times, and the oldest son would get a double portion. He would get 2/7 rather than just 2/8 rather than 1/7. Not only that, it was the oldest son, again according to tradition, it was the oldest son responsibility to carry on the family. This is the nature of a patriarchic system, is that the oldest son was expected, he would receive special blessings, special privileges, and a greater portion of the inheritance. That is the birthright. So Esau said to him, I'm about to die of starvation. Of what is a birthright? Of what use is a birthright to me? Esau doesn't appreciate his birthright. We have a birthright. As sons and daughters of God, joint heirs with Jesus Christ, you and I have a birthright. We have an inheritance. We have a heritage. And we have special blessings, special privileges. We are children of God, and in a sense, when we can understand and respect and appreciate our birthright, or we can be like Esau here and have no regard for our birthright, no special awareness of our place in the universe as children of God. And so Jacob says, swear to me first. So Esau swears to Jacob, and Esau sells his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and he drank and he rose and he went his way. Ha! So there we go. Our birthright as children of God are divine ideas. As sons and daughters of God, joint heirs of Jesus Christ, we have a birthright, and that birthright, our inheritance, our heritage, are divine ideas. This is our only true inheritance of God. This is what we get from God by order of our birth, by privilege of our birth. We are given the opportunity to receive divine ideas. So, and I love this. For many of my 12-step brothers and sisters might be familiar with this. I always think of this little story of Esau selling Jacob his birthright, like the old adage in the 12-step community. Don't let yourself get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. You frequently hear that acronym HALT. Don't let yourself get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. Remember to halt. If you allow yourself to get into a low place in consciousness, by allowing yourself to get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you might be into a position to sell your birthright as a child of God for something of very little value. We force ourselves by getting too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. We let our consciousness sink, and we give up what we have for something of very little value. So that's that story of Jacob and Esau, and the selling of the birthright is representative of what happens within us when we do not appreciate our birthright as children of God. So here we have a little story in Genesis 26 where Isaac sort of is a reflection of Rebekah. We're not going to do a close read of this story, but you remember when Abraham passed Sarah off as his sister rather than his wife to curry political favor or something of that nature. In Genesis 26, there's a little story where Isaac passes Rebekah off as his sister, just like Abraham and Sarah back in Genesis 12 and 20. Again, we're not going to do a close read of this. In Genesis 27, Jacob then supplants Esau a second time. Remember, Jacob means supplanter and heel. And here we have again Jacob scheming. Isaac is old and he wants to bless Esau as an inheritor before he dies. And he tells Esau to go hunting and bring back some game for a meal. And when Esau comes back, Isaac will then impart this blessing, the blessing of the eldest son. All right. Well, Rebekah is listening. And remember, Jacob is Rebekah's favorite. And what happens is Rebekah and Jacob conspire to trick Abraham. Talk about a dysfunctional family. So Rebekah says to Jacob, tells him to get one of the kids from the flock, get some of the livestock, and we will prepare it as if it were wild game. We'll fix it just the way that Isaac likes. We'll make him his favorite meal. And Jacob says to Isaac, Jacob says that Isaac will figure it out. Hey, my father's no dummy. He's going to figure this out. My brother Esau is a hairy man. He's going to feel Esau's arms, and he's going to figure out that I'm not Esau. The trick isn't going to work. But Jacob swears, Jacob wears Esau's clothing, and Rebekah tells him to put the skins of the livestock, the skin of the kids on his hands and on the smooth parts of his neck, and that will trick Jacob. That'll trick Jacob, and Isaac will think that Jacob is Esau. Oy vey, this gets so complex and confusing sometimes. Well, when first we practice to deceive. So Jacob goes to Isaac and he pulls the wool over his eyes. Where do you think we get that expression? To pull the wool over somebody's eyes? Jacob was wearing the wool from the kids on his hands and on the smooth portion of his neck. And then Jacob receives the blessing that was intended for Esau. Well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next is that Esau is going to come back. And that's exactly what happens. As soon as Isaac has finished blessing Jacob, Esau comes in from his hunting, and the whole plan is discovered. It all falls apart. Esau says to Isaac, bless me also, Father. And Isaac essentially says, sorry, only one blessing per son. Your brother has acted deceitfully and has taken away your blessing. The blessing that I intended for you, Jacob stole from you. So again, Jacob has supplanted Esau, and the name Jacob means supplanter. So this is as like our understanding in unity, the power of the spoken word. Once we speak the word, our words have power. Our words do not return to us void, is the old unity expression. Our words do not return to us void. They have power, they have meaning, and they have expression. So essentially this is a caution to use your words carefully. Use your words carefully because they have power and they have meaning. Then this is a common theme throughout the Bible. This story of two brothers. This again, we're gonna bring up. We've already heard the story of Cain and Abel. There are also reflections of this Jacob and Esau story in the story of Joseph and his brothers. We're going to get to that in a few chapters. And in the New Testament, there is the parable of the prodigal son in Luke 15. And all of these stories, the story of two brothers, you can just lump them all together in the story of two brothers. The story of two brothers is first of all, it's borrowed from an ancient Egyptian story. We won't get into that in too much detail. I think we covered that a little bit in the Cain and Abel story. But at a certain time in history, and we're going to be covering this in further the story of the Old Testament, the story of the First Testament. There's a time when there is a united kingdom under Saul and David and Solomon. There is a united kingdom. We at the moment we're just nothing more than a family. We're just a family. But eventually the nation of Israel will become a worshiping nation, and it will be a nation united under the kingdoms of the kings of Saul and David and Solomon. And that at a certain point in history, like so many countries, the country will divide, and there will be a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And these two kingdoms, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, will be referred to in metaphor as two brothers. Two brothers. They are so when you hear the story of two brothers, you are also hearing a reflection or a commentary of this period of history of the divided nation, the two nations of Israel and Judah. We're going to get to that later. But we can explain our conflicts within the human family as sibling rivalry. We are all of us children of God, and as children, we are brothers and sisters together. We are, and our non-binary brothers and non-binary family as well. We are all a part of one human family. And do families always get along together? No. That is the nature of families sometimes. But just as we are all fingers, separate, we may appear to be separate and apart, but we are all part of a hand. We are all part of one human family. Brothers, sisters, our non-binary family, we have very different natures: bookish, outdoorsy, athletic, artistic, etc. The list goes on and on and on. We have different natures, but we are all one family. We are all one family. So at the end of chapter 27, at the beginning of chapter 28, we have two different versions of how Jacob flees from his brother's wrath. And why two different versions? Two different writers. For those of you who remember a few weeks back, we talked about the documentary hypothesis. At a certain point, the documentary hypothesis, as long as you're aware of it, well, why does this story say one thing and that story say a different thing? Don't worry about it. It's two different writers writing at two different times in history. It's important I am a strong believer in documentary hypothesis, in literary criticism, it is also called. This understanding that the Old Testament especially was developed over time different writers writing at different periods of history and woven together in this sort of scissors and paste method. Again, over time, this is an evolution of this story, just as there is an evolution of consciousness. But we're not going to worry too much about, well, this is J and this is P. Don't worry about it. So in Genesis 27:42 through 46, Esau is so angry that Rebekah tells Jacob that he better go and just leave town. Go up and see my brother Laban in Haran. Remember Laban? That's who Isaac's servant negotiated with to bring Rebekah home for Isaac. So go and see my brother Laban in Haran until Esau cool. This will blow over. Esau will cool down. You better hightail it out of town. Genesis 28, Isaac tells Jacob not to marry one of the local Canaanite women. Again, that's a reflection of Abraham and Isaac. Isaac tells Jacob, don't marry one of the local women. Go up to Rebekah's brother Laban and up north in Haran and marry one of his daughters. So Esau marries Ishmael's daughter. Okay, remember Esau? Esau is the brother of Jacob, and Ishmael is the brother of Isaac. So Esau marries Ishmael's brother. As Jacob is hightailing it out of town, he has this wonderful dream. This is, again, one of the stories. This is one of those that you remember from Sunday school. Jacob's dream of the ladder at Bethel. Jacob is on his journey. He's hightailing it out of town, and he stops for the night, and taking a stone from the place, he puts it under his head and lays down in that place. He's using a pillow for a stone, or stone for a pillow. You may have heard that. It's in a couple of songs that I sing. And he dreams that there is a ladder set up on the earth with its top reaching all the way into the heavens. And there are angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Oh, look at all of that. All of these angels. What are angels? Angels represent divine ideas. They are messengers of God. So when we get, hey, there's my idea, there's my golden ticket idea, that's the idea. You've just been visited by an angel. Alrighty. So we receive this divine idea. And at Bethel, by the way, this place where he receives this dream is Bethel. It means house of God. So we have Jacob, and he has this dream of angels ascending and descending on this ladder set up on the earth with its top reaching into the heavens. And he's got all of these great ideas. So the Lord stood beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Here is what happens, is that this dream where Jacob sees all of these angels is an opportunity. God will repeat this covenant, this agreement. What's the agreement? I will give you a land to possess. I will make of you a great nation, and through you the whole world will receive a blessing. So the land on which you lie, I will give you, you and your offspring. And your offspring will be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south, and to the west, and all of the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Know that I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. And then Jacob woke up from his dream, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. You know that? You might even know that song. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can see God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. So you get this reflection. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. You ever felt that way? I remember when I first moved from my home, Lincoln, Nebraska. I was born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. And, when I was young, I didn't think I would ever leave. But at a certain point, I was married at the time, and my wife wanted to further her education in Kentucky. And of course, I wanted to be with her. And so we moved to Kentucky. And I really did feel that way for a while. I really had a hard time settling in when I moved to Kentucky. Nothing was where I thought it should be. The customs were different, and it wasn't the deep South, but it was the South, and it was just different. And everything, I had such a hard time getting used to things and finding what I needed to find, and I was so lonely because all of my friends were far away from me, and it wasn't nearly as easy to communicate back in those days. We had telephones, but there was no Facebook or anything like that. But eventually, I came to an understanding. First of all, I had been introduced to Unity, but I found the Unity Church in Lexington, and I found my mentor. I found a whole bunch of new friends, and I found a life. And I could feel that I have a strong tie to this particular feeling. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't even know it. Verses 15 and 16, and these are the sections underlined above. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. I will not leave you. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. It reminds me a great deal of James Dillett Freeman's prayer for protection. We say this every single Sunday morning on many of our services, the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The presence of God protects us. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The presence of God, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Here we go. Wherever I am, God is, and all is well. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. We get this sense of protection no matter where we are. The promise of God the promise that God makes with Jacob is a repeat of this covenant with Abraham back in Genesis 12. And this story also emphasizes the importance of dreams and visions. Dreams can be important indicators of spiritual consciousness. Carl Jung, noted psychologist Carl Jung, saw dreams as the psyche's attempt. The psyche, another word for psyche is soul. It is your soul's attempt to communicate important things to the individual. Dreams tell us important things. Dreams are an important part of the development of our personality, and that can be dreams in the sense that you go to sleep and you have a dream that you have a hard time interpreting, but also dreams in terms of our desires. The desire of what pulls us can also be called a dream. And this is a process. Carl Jung says that the process of these dreams are the process of individuation. It is what makes us an individual. It is what makes us separate, different. It is part of what makes us unique. Let's see. We're almost out of time. Jacob reminds me. Oh, I already. The promise repeated God. The first two spiritual. Oh. The first two bullet points are actually repeats from the previous slide. The third one here. Jacob has two spiritual experiences. One at the beginning of this journey of discovery going up to Laban in the north. He will have another one at the other end of this story that we're telling. So at the beginning, at the end, he has these two spiritual experiences. We're going to get into the other spiritual experience after we tell a little bit more of the story. So Jacob, he wakes up from this dream. He takes the stone that he was using as a pillow, and he builds an altar. He builds an altar. And then Jacob makes a vow. He says, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, if this happens and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I may come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. Remember, Bethel actually means God's house. And all that you have given me, I will, and of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you. What does this sound like? It sounds like a tithe, doesn't it? I will surely give 1/10 to you. But is it a tithe? Pay attention here, because Jacob is actually making a bargain with God. Jacob is bargaining with God. If you will bless me and keep me, if you give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, if you do all of these things for me, then I will give you my tithe. Well, that's not a tithe. A tithe is giving 1/10 where we receive our spiritual food. And it is unconditional. It is an unconditional gift. It isn't, I will give you 1/10 if you do all of these things for me. It is a commitment. A tithe is a spiritual commitment to acknowledge where our good comes from. In a sense, it's Jacob is putting the cart before the horse. Jacob is saying, the practice of tithing is a gift ahead of time, not a gift saying thank you for what you've already received. It is an acknowledgement that I will receive. It is an acknowledgement that I will receive the divine ideas, the spiritual guidance that I need to maintain a happy, healthy, more prosperous life, a freer, fuller, more expansive life. That's what a tithe is. It is an acknowledgement of what will come, not a thank you for what I have received. So this is, again, it is bargaining with God and not an example of the tithe. Jacob will spend 20 years in Haran, and those years are sandwiched between these two spiritual experiences. We've had the dream of the ladder at Bethel, and we will have another dream in a few chapters. In our own lives, we may have deeply meaningful experiences at the beginning and at the conclusion of major life events. And just know that this is something that happens in a spiritual life. We are part of our divine guidance acknowledges that we are beginning a new chapter, beginning a new story, and our dreams, our psyche, our experiences of God will reflect that. So it's time to break away now. This has been Reverend Evan Coleman and Metaphysics. I come to you live every single Sunday morning. Let us receive our offering blessing. Let us acknowledge God's presence and power within you. And if you have a gift, a tithe, or anything that reflects your abundance and the prosperity that you have in your life, hold that in your hand. Hold a special thought within you and say this offertory blessing with me now. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful. Thank you, God. And you can send your tithes and love offerings to paypal.me/UnityLincoln. That is paypal.me/UnityLincoln. Or if you're already on PayPal, you can send it directly to office@unitylincoln.org. Or if you're sending your gift the old-fashioned way, through the mail or through a bank transfer, you can send it to Unity Lincoln, P.O. Box 30209, Lincoln, Nebraska 68503. Or you can go to our webpage at unitylincoln.org, and there you will find a convenient link to donate via PayPal. You can also support Unity Lincoln by signing up for the Amazon Smile program so that everything that you order on Amazon.com supports Unity Lincoln. And remember to like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, give us the big thumbs up, leave comments in the comments section. We are so grateful when you do, when you let us know that you are out there. Remember to join us for our Sunday morning service. That will be happening in just a little bit at 10:30 every single Sunday morning. Again, live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. We are inviting people back into the sanctuary. We're practicing social distancing. We are wearing our masks. And so please do think about joining us again on Sunday morning. We have a few intrepid souls who join us every Sunday morning now. But we will continue to live stream our worship service every single Sunday morning. Join us for Unity Cafe on Wednesday nights at 6:30. Again, live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Join Adeline and her friends and her book club. They are no longer on break. They have resumed again, and they are in the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And so that class, that book club meets via Zoom. So you can contact the office at unitylincoln.org, and ask for the Zoom link to Adeline's book club. We will make certain that you get that. And dear friends, I am so grateful that you have been able to join me here again for Metaphysics with Reverend Evan Coleman. God bless you.